Hi everybody, just wanted to make a quick review here of the drywall hoist that I bought. Had a little project going on here, renovating an older property. Got a small room that I needed to hang some drywall in. Couldn't handle necessarily the overhead parts by myself, so I thought, hey, let's invest and get a lift that'll help with the job. But this isn't something that I do all the time, obviously. We're just renovating this one room in this old house. And so I thought, instead of trying to struggle with it, come up with some way to prop up the drywall using boards or something, I'll just invest in a one of the lower end, less expensive options out there. Instead of renting, I can just have this when I need it, when I can get to this project, because it's not something that I can get at every day, just when I've got time. So I'm like, all right, spend some money. So I went on Amazon, found this one. It was the least expensive option, and here's my thoughts on it. It's certainly better than just trying to wrestle panels by myself out of the box. It came, well packaged. Everything was bundled up well, the tape well, so it shipped quick from when I bought it to when I got it. Box was in good shape when I got here. Unpacked everything, and there were a couple of spots on some of the steel where some of the paint had rubbed off. I think that's a big deal because it's going to happen when you're using it anyway. But got it out of the box, started putting it together. Went together pretty quick. I've used one of these before, so I knew how it went together. The main components are pretty solid. Typical steel, some of the typical ways that the other brands slide together too, with the arms, and then how the main trunk kind of sits on the shaft there. There's that shaft that just goes on in so the head can spin, so you can position stuff. The crank handle for going up and down, and with the brake, for lowering crank, it can go up, and then to lower it, just hold this up and it releases. That's fairly typical. I guess some of the things that make it less expensive, I guess, would be basically some of the small things. Some of the connectors and stuff aren't necessarily are fairly, we'll call it inexpensive. I don't want to use the word cheap, but you judge it for what it is. Basically for holding, these arms extend out so you can handle wider sheets, and they will extend out pretty good. It'll handle a 12-foot sheet. It just slides in and out, and then you've got the holes. Then there's just this pin on a spring to kind of hold it in place, which is a little bit less expensive than some of the other brands that I've used. The other thing that I noticed is the assembly for holding the legs in place. If this guy isn't exactly where it needs to be, it's a pretty simple little spot. But if it's not right up in there, there's a couple of times when I tried rolling this thing and the legs folded back because this wasn't where it was supposed to be, right in. And so when you're pushing it, then these guys will fold, and you might wind up tipping over face forward, which isn't a good thing. So you got to be mindful to make sure everything's where it needs to be. The wheels do have locks on them, which are all right. Overall, drywall professionals aren't going to be investing in this piece because it's not going to hold up for them. But if you're a DIYer that has a decent sized project that you're low on manpower for, you're doing overhead work, or even on, sidewalls, I used it for holding these panels in place up against the side, and it worked pretty well for that. I think the height on this is supposed to be 11 feet high that it can reach, and it'll do that. It'll hold these panels in place. I held these ones up here too, and it's handy, but I guess what I'm getting at is that I guess probably the optimal use for this piece is going to be for, for a DIYer, or for folks that only have like a couple, you got a couple of rooms with some high places that you need help with. This will certainly expedite the process, but it's not going to be, a long-term tool investment, because I'm I'm not thinking, this is the clip that holds, this is the head from spinning. It's just on there with some lock nuts, and so others that I've seen that, have it on a spring that, you can fold down and it snaps right in place. There's just some of the connectors and some of the things are just, on the low end, which is why this thing is probably one of the cheaper ones that you can get. So if you've got a project coming up that you want to tackle by yourself, this will certainly be, a good set of hands. It would be a decent investment for a DIYer, for a home renovation project that, you think you can tackle yourself, but you've got some heights to deal with, or some slanted walls, or just having an extra set of hands. This would be really good. It's not like you'd have to, I think I got it for, $170 and change. It'll pay itself back in the time that you'll save, and, saving your back. It'll do what you need it to on a couple of small projects and be worth the investment. And you could, sell it off on marketplace to somebody else that can do the same thing, which would probably wind up being a cheaper route than renting one. But if you're looking at making a long-term investment for lots of projects, this, I don't think it's going to hold up for, long-term use. I'd say it'd be well worth the money to spend a little more money on, a little bit better made lift. But as far as what I needed it for, it's going to work out. If you're, say, you're a landlord that does your own, that does your own maintenance or renovations or whatever, and you only need it, occasionally, a couple times a year or what, then I'd say this piece would probably be worth that. But it's not going to be, a tool that, a regular drywall hanger or finisher is going to invest in, because it's just not going to hold up for everyday use long term. But I would say it was worth investing in it for what I needed it to do. A couple of rooms, one guy working by yourself, it'll certainly come in handy. But so overall, I'd say it's worth it for what it is, if you don't expect too much. If you're all right with, some some of the, lower quality, I don't know. It's just simpler ways to do it. But, for what it is, I think it does all right. Any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments or whatever, let me know. But I guess it's, the saying goes, as far as tools go, you get what you pay for, and don't, it doesn't, the listing didn't overpromise and underdeliver. It was true to its word, and it'll do what it needs to do. But if you're looking for, like I've said over and over again, you just got a couple of projects you need an extra hand for, it's worth it, I'd say. So thanks for looking. I'll see you next time.
no issue. Issue's only on one side. Still, this thing is huge, and I'm not trying to send it back. I don't know what I can figure out. Maybe cut it and re-weld it, but waiting long enough. Now this is frustrating. Hit a snag and can't do anything.
Brand new. This is already broken from the weight. So the arm just swings around. Look at how bent this thing is already. When you crank it, it catches the rope right there. See it? As soon as you put the weight on it, it's worse. Now this thing, look at this. When you put the weight, it catches. This is a piece of junk. The whole thing is falling apart. It's metal ready to snap or something.